Hi, everybody. My name is Tristana Perkel. I'm the Executive Director of the School Garden Support Organization-Network. You are at the Youth Internship Programs webinar, where we're just diving into all the different ways to get youth involved in a more job type way in the garden, building job skills, and so forth. Today, we'll be joined by Hannah Ball-Damberg and Geoffrey Seelen of the Durham Public Schools in Durham, North Carolina, and Robin Ruff of the Royal Bay Secondary School, and Matthew Kemshaw of Flourish School Food Society in Victoria, BC. So we've got a great lineup for you today. If you could go to the next slide, please. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared out via email afterward. It will also be linked to in our recording library. The slide is not moving forward on my end. If you could please move forward to the next slide. There we go. Thanks so much. We've got a resource handout for you just from the relevant links, as well as a link to the slide deck for today's webinar. I will put that in the chat in just a moment. This webinar will be an hour and 15 minutes long. We'll spend the first hour in content, and then we'll have the last 15 minutes for Q&A. So as your questions come up, please go ahead and put them into the Q&A section of the Zoom screen, and we will compile those and ask them at the end. We'd also love to get your feedback, so I will be putting the link to our survey at the end of the webinar. It'll also pop up when your webinar window closes. We're always looking to understand how this webinar was for you, but also what future webinar topics you'd like to hear about from our amazing experts and peers in our field. So if you go to the next slide, please. This webinar is featuring participants from the annual SGSO Leadership Institute that is put on by LifeLab and Whole Kids Foundation in partnership with the SGSO-Network. The Leadership Institute is an opportunity, it's a week-long opportunity for leaders of school garden support organizations or organizations that support multiple school gardens to come together to learn from one another, share best practices, and dive deep into developing their organizations specifically around professional development and incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion into their programs. So today, our presenters are all from the previous Leadership Institute last December. If you go to the next slide, we are featuring a webinar series to highlight participants from this Leadership Institute, and we're about halfway through. So there have been 2 previous webinars, and our upcoming webinar in the series after this one will be focusing on bilingual family engagement. So how to engage family members from who speak both English and Spanish in your garden. That will be on July 31st, so be sure to check that one out, as well as our previous webinars. So now I'm going to pass it off to our amazing presenters, and we're starting first with Hannah and Jeff from Durham Public Schools.
Awesome. Thank you, Tristana. Can everyone see me and hear me? Hopefully, yes. Okay. Hey, y'all. My name is Hannah Ball-Damberg. I am joined today with my coworker, Jeff. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Maya. Hi, Jesse. It's fun to see some other people from our institute here today with us. Also wild to see folks are still harvesting radishes and kale, which is crazy. We are knee deep in summer here in Durham, North Carolina. But I work at the Durham Public Schools Hub Farm with Jeff. We are both farm educators, and we are going to be sharing a little bit about what youth career programming looks like at our farm. So next slide, please. Cool, so this is an overview of what we'll be discussing. We'll do intros for each of us. We'll talk a little bit about who we are, who and what the Hub Farm is. We'll do a little bit of past, present, and future visioning for career programming, and also discuss challenges and successes in our internship models. Next slide. So brief intros for each of us. So that's me on the left with 3 of our summer garden interns from a few years ago, and our beautiful rooster, Rogue, RIP. My name's Hannah Ball-Damberg. I use she, her pronouns. I am actually from Durham. I'm a Durham native and a former Durham Public Schools student myself. So it's been really cool to get to have this kind of full circle experience being a student and now working in DPS. I've been at the Hub Farm as a farm educator since 2018, and both Jeff and I manage field trips, volunteers, gardens, livestock, grant writing, and more. And that is Jeff on the right. He will share in a little bit. That's him with his spring interns from this past spring. He comes to us as a farmer first and foremost. He had his own farm many moons ago and then moved into classroom teaching in Durham Public Schools. So he has a wealth of knowledge in both teaching and farming. And he has been a farm educator with us since 2022. Cool. So next slide, please. So the Hub Farm is Durham Public Schools' outdoor learning center. So our mission is to engage the DPS community in meaningful outdoor experiences. And we have sort of three pillars of our mission. Environmental education. So we offer K through 12 standards aligned field trips, high school internships, and summer camp. And this is like the majority of what our presentation is on today. Another pillar of our mission is community engagement, and we do that through workshops and community events at the farm. And then finally, capacity building for outdoor learning at the district level, which looks often like professional development and also embedded professional development for teachers at our summer camp, which is going on right now. Next slide. So a little bit of history about the Hub Farm. That is an image of what the land looked like when the farm was founded in 2012. We sit on 30 acres of Shikori and Okinichi land in North Durham. So our land was originally stewarded by those two indigenous tribes to the area who still inhabit the area today. The land was donated to the county by a family called the Carrington family in the late 1800s. And then it was starting to be used in the late 80s by the Career and Technical Education Program. So we call that the CTE program department of DPS before falling into disuse. And so the barn that you see pictured here was built by electrical and engineering students. And then animal science students raised goats in the barn and stocked the ponds with fish. And so the land was used a bit in the 80s and 90s by the CTE program, and then it fell into disuse, and as you can see, became overgrown and was a fallow field. And in 2012, a group of educators and administrators and families got together to dream up the Hub Farm. And so we today sit between an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. So we're really uniquely situated in North Durham. And we've always been the reason of sharing our history is because we've always been focused on career training as a big piece of our mission at the Hub Farm. So next slide, please. So this is what the Hub Farm looks like today. So you saw that fallow field in the barn. The barn is now sort of our the icon of the Hub Farm. So with this big red barn is now our office. We do work there year round, no AC, no heat. So I am currently in the AC right now and feeling very grateful for it. You can see our vegetable garden on the bottom left, which is now an orchard space, but previously for many years was where we grew our annual vegetables. And then that panorama on the top right is kind of a larger, wider angle view of our farm. Next slide. So a little bit more about the history of career programming at the Hub Farm. So like I mentioned, we've always been funded through the Career and Technical Education Department of DPS. We focus particularly with our career development, we focus particularly on 8th grade students who are about to enter into high school, and then also high school outdoor career development. So historically, we've partnered primarily with animal science classes, horticulture classes, agriculture, and culinary arts classes. And I'm going to go into depth a bit more about some of these historical offerings on the next slide. But some of the things that we have offered to these 8th grade and high school students include supervised agricultural experiences. So that's the acronym SAE, which is a requirement for students in CTE classes to graduate. So students previously have raised turkeys and goats at the hub farm and then sold them at livestock shows, but they had the entire experience of raising the animals, building their enclosures, providing all of the animal care, etc. And these are often pre-veterinary students. We've also always offered a after-school internship program. It used to take the form of a farm stand. The farm stand has gone through many different iterations, no longer in existence. But our farm stand was offered, we had it both in downtown Durham for a few years before I worked at the hub farm, and then it moved to the library next door. And so our students would manage the farm stand, they would harvest everything, they would, wash and pack all of our produce, and then set up a farm stand at the library for visitors to the library to purchase produce from us. And then the money from that farm stand would help support those students. We also offered a community supported agriculture program where students would come to the farm during one of their class periods during school and harvest and pack all of the produce for the day. And then I or another farm educator would deliver those bags to CSA customers. We've also partnered previously with our soil and water department, offering training through a program called BETSI, which stands for Bioeconomic Training Program. And it gets students career ready by giving them internships around Durham in outdoor fields. And we functioned as one of those places. We used to also offer middle and high school outdoor career days, and that would mean that we would invite experts in career fields across Durham to come work with students and teach them what sort of their career field looks like and what a day in their work day looks like. And finally, something that sits very close to home for me is offering farm to table programming with our culinary arts department. And so I will show a few images of each of those offerings on the next slide. The next slide. Cool. So here are some images for some of those historical programs that I mentioned. So in our upper left-hand corner, an animal science student is doing a health check on one of our chickens. And so, like I said, students have raised chickens, goats, and turkeys at the hub farm. And so again, that they are responsible for all of the care of those animals, and they are learning hands-on skills for their career field in veterinary science. Below that image is an image of 3 students working in our vegetable garden. So those are likely horticulture students. And so actually those bottom 2 images are horticulture students. So they are tilling and preparing beds for planting in that middle image. In the bottom image, they are harvesting radishes. Over to the right, we have our chef from our culinary arts program at the high school nearby, who we partner with pretty regularly in the chef coat. Chef Brodsky, he's demonstrating how to grow mushrooms, culinary and edible mushrooms on logs. And so, with our culinary arts program, we have also offered everything from a farm dinner to a virtual cookie night during COVID to a farm to table dinner that was planned and prepared for the Board of Education. So we like to partner throughout a semester to really show our students the process from planting crops, seeding crops, harvesting, and then cooking finally. Above that image of our chef is an image of some of our interns actually inoculating those mushroom logs. So they are learning those skills as well, and small business entrepreneurship. And then over on the right-hand side, we've got 2 images of our farm stand, like I mentioned. And so those are 2 of our previous after-school interns who were managing that farm stand at the library next door. And so you can see they've got it going on there. And then finally, in the bottom right-hand corner, we have a few other culinary arts students who are washing, I guess that's spinach, and prepping it to bag up and take back to the culinary arts classroom to prepare. So those are just a few images of some of our historical career offerings. Next slide, please. Cool.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Hannah. That was great. I'm Jeff. Hannah introduced me, but I'll just reiterate. I'm Jeff Seelen. I'm the other Hub Farm educator at the Durham Public Schools Hub Farm. Hannah and I are in a dual role where we both essentially perform very similar tasks and have the pleasure of being able to work on a small team, making a lot of decisions about how these programs work. And I'm here to talk a little bit more about what our present day internship programming looks like. So thanks again, Hannah, for that great introduction. So we're very proud of the fact that we can offer internships that are explicitly designed to look at career pathways, to empower our young people in our public school system to think about what it's like to have a job, to inhabit that job, to have responsibilities, to take ownership over a place. And it also gives them an opportunity to build up their resumes and demonstrate that they've had real work experience, which is something that not all high school students have the privilege to do. We also try to make it fun, and we feel like it's a very good reciprocal process, mostly just because, as I mentioned before, we have a very small team. Traditionally, there's only about 3 people running our 30-acre campus. So having interns, of course, provides them with all the benefits that I just outlined, but it also provides us with more people on the farm to just make sure the grounds are kept intact and that all of our produce is cared for so that we can use it for education when we have field trips. So essentially, during the school year, we have multiple iterations of interns, and I'll talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of that on the next slide. But basically, we have internships that meet during the school year, that come to the farm after school, after the school day. That's usually managed by one of us. Plus, right now, we have an AmeriCorps member on our campus. So she is able to provide a lot of additional support and capacity to manage 6 high school students, because that's how many are involved in that program, of which there are 2, one in the fall and one in the spring. And then during the summer, we have 2 concurrent internship programs. One that spends a lot more time on the farm side of things. And the other, we call those our counselors in training, or CITs. And they help run a rising 1st through 3rd grade summer camp, which is also a wonderful resource that we provide for our community. It's very inexpensive. And so we have lots of public school students spending 2 to 4 weeks here on the farm during the summer. So I'll talk a little bit more about the details of those different programs. So all of our internship programs currently are paid. We pay through various funding sources. Some of it is funded through grants, some of it comes from the district itself, and we kind of are tasked with kind of piecing those puzzle pieces together during the school year to decide where the funding is going to come from for these programs. But so far, we seem to have been able to keep the ship afloat, and we continue to have competitive application periods where we get lots of people applying for limited positions. So we're very lucky to have the opportunity to continue these programs. So during the school year, what a semester would normally look like is an 8-week program where they're coming to the farm 2 days per week. So over that run, it's about 30 hours. So they're getting a lump sum payment after that 30 hours is complete. We handle their employment and payment internally, and I put employment in scare quotes because they're not employees. They're technically on a field trip. So they have to sign a field trip permission slip that's signed by their parent or guardian, and then they are employed by the farm. And we handle that payment internally. We actually have a nonprofit board that handles a lot of the money that we get from grants because, and I won't go into the details here, but because we're part of a public school system, we're not able to apply for all grants because of the status of our organization. So our nonprofit board handles a lot of the capital that we bring in and then helps us assign it to the programs that we want to use it for. So we'll apply for a grant and we'll use that money to pay the interns for that semester. And then the focus of that internship is explicitly agriculturally based. And because it's such a long period, we can give them a really good sense of what it looks like to work on a small vegetable farm for a whole season. So we'll start them out in our greenhouse, show them how to implement the environmental controls in the greenhouse, how to manage seedlings, germination, mixing potting soil, dealing with germination issues, et cetera, out into the garden, dealing with things like irrigation. And the idea is the longer they come to the farm, the more they understand about our systems and what needs to get done. So over the course of 8 weeks, we try to give them a sense of ownership over the farm, and our expectations change from the first week, which is more of like a hand-holding period where I'll basically show them how to do everything. And by week 8, I can usually walk away from them performing a task and trust that they'll get it done. And obviously, I'm responsible for their safety. So it's not like I abandon them, but I do want the change from week 1 to week 8 to be pretty apparent. And then during the summer, we have a little bit shorter program, but it's actually more hours total. So the opportunity for compensation is much higher. And that's just because we have a lot more going on in the summer. So as I mentioned, we have a summer camp for young students. And the employment status of the interns during the summer is handled by a non-district entity. So they deal with all of the onboarding, all of the paperwork, all of the forms that they have to fill out as employees, and they also deal with the payment. So that's something that we are lucky enough to not have to handle. So we can just focus on designing a program for them. And so in the summer, we split the interns, and just to give you an example and a contrast, the programs that meet during the school year usually have 6 interns. And in the summer right now, we have about 12 altogether, and they are split on 2 different paths. One of those pathways is working with the camp, and those are the counselors in training. And that's a wonderful program because the high schoolers involved are paired each with a camp counselor who is always a Durham public school teacher working here on an extra duty contract to make more income during the summer. So they get one-on-one mentorship from a certified classroom teacher, and they are responsible for a group of about 10 to 12 youngsters. So they are spending all day from about 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. For 4 weeks, running activities all over the farm with their mentor and the students who are in their group. Hannah and I have actually very little involvement in that program because of the fact that we are able to hire classroom teachers to perform the responsibility of being counselors. And so what Hannah and I are doing during the summer is we're running our own garden internship program. And that is very similar to the school year program in the sense that they are more responsible for the different enterprises around the farm. So learning how to work in our garden, learning about our orchard, our different animals on the farm, and other assets that we have. And obviously it's a huge benefit because there's just a ton of work to do in the summer. It's a very busy time. If, as you all know, working on a farm, there's tons going on, lots growing. So just having the extra help is great. And then, of course, as I've already said, it's great for the students because it gives them a real world job opportunity, and it's great for their resume. And they just have a great time because we try to mix a little bit of fun into each week because we know how hard the work is. I mean, today it was 100 degrees, just absolutely brutal. And it's really amazing to watch the transformation from when the students first arrive, when they experience these conditions, to watch them kind of persevere. And it really does require a positive attitude to get through some of the harder parts of the day. But it's just really fun to do. So yeah, I know that we are talking about youth internships, but I did want to cover the fact that we do have a very strong history of working with college students as well in separate internship programs. And I think that it's worthwhile if those of you who are attending this webinar haven't looked into it, look into some of the service learning programs that your local universities may either have or are developing, because we've had a lot of success working with at least one college student every semester, including during the summer. So a lot, like I said, a lot of local universities already have a service learning requirement for specific majors. There are certain departments. I know, for example, a lot of the interns in college who come to the farm are working towards a degree in human development and family sciences. But the obvious connections are things like agriculture, social work, education, both primary and secondary. So I think being resourceful and thinking about building capacity for your organizations can be really big, especially if you're like us with a very small staff with a lot of programming. It can really boost your ability because while the high school students are always great and have a lot to offer, having someone on the farm who is a young adult can really make things a little bit easier. In our case, the universities usually handle like the recruitment through some kind of application and then shares those things with us, resumes, CVs, cover letters, and we review them, we interview candidates and select a couple students each semester, depending on who the candidates are and whether or not we feel like it's worthwhile, because you have to do a cost benefit analysis. You can get a lot, as I've said, out of a really motivated young college student, but that also means that you need to spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to be doing every day, because you really need to respect the fact that they're coming to the farm with very little knowledge sometimes. And if they're doing it for class credit, a lot of them are not getting paid. So I think you really have to respect the fact that they're essentially volunteering their time. And of course, it's going toward their degree, but it is a lot of responsibility on the supervisor side. to make sure that the experience is worthwhile for them and they're not just coming to be an extra set of hands to weed in the garden when there's nothing else to do. So we try to be very intentional about what they're going to be doing. They can help us with capacity issues on field trips, for example, during the semester. And I think one of the brightest things about the college internship is a lot of the students are expected to complete some kind of project as part of the course completion that they're enrolled in. And so, again, being very intentional about what that project is can bring a lot of value to the farm. So usually the student will create some kind of new curriculum or build something, or repair a structure, or create new signage or a new process. I'll just give you one example before I finish my spiel. Last semester, we had a student develop an entire plant propagation program that's basically turnkey that we can now use to teach our horticulture students that come from our local high school. So before I hand it over to our co-presenters, I'll just quickly go through some challenges and successes that we've noticed on the farm. Challenges, as I've already said, capacity, but transportation is really big, and that goes for everything, not just interns, but for field trips too. We'd love to see every student in the district, but transportation is definitely an issue, even though it's very inexpensive. It's essentially free for students to come here. If we can't make it work with the buses, then it's not going to happen. Same goes for interns. They need to be able to provide their own transportation at this point. So the students that can come are obviously fortunate enough to be able to do that. And if they don't, we don't really have a solution for that at this point. Student distribution, what I mean by that is parity across different schools. We tend to get students who live closer, obviously, and we are in North Durham, and Durham is large. So if you live in South Durham, it just means it's harder to get here. Collaborating with teachers can be inconsistent on field trips, although we do have a lot of teachers that come out here who really work closely with us to develop those field trips and what they look like. And then consistent funding sources. What's working really well, things like community engagement, the student experiences, as I've already said, are very meaningful. People that come here get it, so we have a lot of stakeholder buy-in. Once people come to the farm, they understand why it's important, so it's not hard for us to explain to people who visit why it matters that we exist. We've done a great job taking care of the land, and our interns obviously are very helpful in that regard. And then, as I and Hannah have both said, the fact that we are able to provide programs that allow students to think about careers, to practice soft skills, to inhabit a professional role while they're still in high school is, I think, really, really great. And I think it is paying dividends for those students. I won't go too far into this, but all that I'll say about the future is that we'd love to just have more students on the farm more often. As I already said, the school year internship programs right now are only able to meet after school because we haven't been able to make it work in terms of having the students come during the day because it's a transportation issue. And we haven't been able to fully imagine what a class would consist of so that they're still in school, but they're using our assets. So we haven't quite squared that circle, but it's something that we're working on. We'd obviously love to have more consistent funding, so institutionalizing those funding sources from the district instead of piecemealing grants. And then we also, of course, want to empower our students to have more input about what those programs look like. Hannah, this past year, was able to help form a committee that consisted of high school students to talk about what the future of our food program is going to look like in school. So we'd like to see more things happening like that. And then, of course, you'll get this information from Tristana, I'm sure, but we just wanted to make sure that if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either of us. So there's our info. And I'm going to hand it over to Robin and Matthew.
Thanks, Jeff and Hannah. That was awesome. It's really interesting to hear a super inspiring model that you guys have there. Yeah, I really enjoyed the presentation. Thanks again. Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew Kemshaw, and I'm joined by my colleague, Robin Ruff. And I'm going to present for the first sort of 3 slides here, and then Robin's going to take over and share a bit more about our program. We're located in Victoria, BC in Canada on the traditional unceded territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. We work in relationship with several nations on southern Vancouver Island, including the Wisanich Nation, Sianu, Suk, and Pachidat nations. We work in the Suk School District, which serves sort of what we call the Western communities of Victoria. It's a relatively large school district with 27 schools. I'm the executive director of the Flourish School Food Society, and Robin is actually a home economics teacher at Royal Bay Secondary. Robin and I have been working together for a number of years, since 2020, in a very kind of formal way, and we've known each other for a longer time than that. And we want to present today about the work that we've done to develop youth internship and youth career kind of opportunities in some of our high school gardens in the Suk School District. So Jeff, we can go to the next slide here. To get you started, I wanted to provide just a little bit of a brief timeline and history of our work, and try, I guess, to explain a bit about who we are in more detail. So in 2020, there was 2 grants that were secured to be able to support hiring me as sort of an outside garden coordinator. So there were 4 high schools in the Suk School District, 3 big ones and 1 small alternate program, that all had either a strong desire to build a large garden or already had a large garden that they wanted more support with. So kind of key leaders at each of those schools came together to try to secure some grant funding to hire a garden coordinator. And they talked me into taking the position on it. I think maybe I actually talked them into hiring me. And the grant was hosted by a nonprofit organization that was attached to one of our high schools. It's a community school, so it has a society that has an office inside of the school. So that's the Edward Milne Community School Society. So I became a part-time staff person of this external society, the Edward Milne Community School Society, and we had 18 months of funding to provide sort of 20 hours a week for me to act as a garden coordinator. And so I started in January of 2020 as a garden coordinator supporting these 4 high school garden projects. And as you probably remember, 2020 was a strange year, and in March, schools after spring break completely shut down with the COVID pandemic. So I was working alone in these school gardens, just trying to take care of school gardens and imagining what could be possible with these spaces. And a part of what we kind of imagined this program would be that through the school year, from September to June, I would be supporting classroom engagement in the school gardens, helping to care for the gardens to make them productive and useful kind of spaces for learning, and also try to be harvesting some food that could go into culinary arts and foods programs within the schools. And that sort of came to be starting in September of 2020. We really started working a lot through the school year with lots of different classes, getting groups out into the gardens, a lot of food studies classes, lots of science classes. We had really quite a wide range of different classes. Each school had a unique sort of range of classes that would come out through the school year. But the focus, the thing that we really want to talk to you about today is our summer work experience program. So we imagined that, you know, it would be really great in the summer months when students are not in school to create a program that could engage students in a little bit more of a deeper kind of career-based work experience program. And so we met and discussed with some career planners in the school district and talked with them about what could work for hosting such a program. And they really recommended to us that we create what they called a WEX credit program. So the work experience credit is actually a in the timetable, I guess, or not the timetable, but like in the curriculum of the school district, there are these 2 credits that students can get for doing work experience with outside organizations. If they do 100 hours of volunteer work experience, they can get a course credit, which can go towards their graduation. So we decided to try hosting like a WEX program and to recruit students to come and work with us for 100 hours through the summer. And we launched this summer WEX program in the summer of 2021. And I was able to recruit 6 students to participate with me, helping to care for our 4 high school gardens. And we met 3 times a week for 8 weeks through the summer. And we would harvest what we could from our gardens and host little school farm stands, little markets to sell our produce, which is what you see in this picture here. And we spent a lot of time, working together in our school gardens, caring for the gardens. And it had went fairly well, although we were finding that it wasn't a huge draw for students. Like we were getting 6, 7, 8 students in 2021 and 2022. And then in 2023, we applied for some funding through a program of the federal government in Canada, which is called Canada Summer Jobs. It's a youth employment program wherein the federal government will provide minimum wage to organizations that are doing sort of service-oriented work in the community, and it allows you to hire youth to support that work. And you can top up their wage so that you don't have to pay the minimum wage, but the government covers minimum wage. So we were successful with the EMCS Society in getting 2 Canada Summer Job students in 2023, so last summer. And so I got to work with 2 students all through the summer. And we had a couple other students who were participating in the WEX program. But with those students last year, we kind of had some discussion about how can we create this program as being a slightly more, I guess, enticing or interesting for high school aged youth. And one big outcome from that was that, and it's not surprising, a lot of high school aged youth were not necessarily interested in committing 2 or 3 days a week for their entire summer to volunteer in a school garden, that it might be better to offer more diverse opportunities for young people to engage in these spaces. And so we shifted our model for this summer, where we now have a program that is still offering the WEX credit for those students who are interested in doing a lot of hours and getting that credit, but we're also offering some one-off kind of workshop opportunities for students to come and learn about growing their own food, about processing food. We have a couple of farm days with local farms where we're going to be supporting students in going out and spending a day on a farm, and creating opportunities for students to just be engaging a little less regularly, but getting exposure to possible career futures in agriculture and food. A part of our summer programming, in addition to working in our school gardens, has been also taking students out for little field trips to local farms and other local food organizations to try to expose them to the interesting people who are working in food systems careers in our community, and to support them in understanding possible futures for them to go after in their careers. We can go to the next slide now. So currently we're just kind of ramping up for our summer. We have the same 2 summer students who graduated from one of our local high schools last year who are coming back to work with us again this summer. And we have about 11 students who have expressed interest in sort of volunteering in our gardens through the summer. We've got 3 students who are registered with the work experience program. And then we have 4 workshops that we're going to be offering that have a larger number of young people signed up. And we're kind of going to go and be regularly in our school gardens. We've actually opened the program up to be beyond just the 4 high school gardens that we have been traditionally caring for. We're now trying to support more gardens in the school district, we've developed quite a strong relationship with the Souk School District, and they're looking at supporting our organization Flourish and providing garden coordination support to all the schools in the district next year. And they're offering us a little bit of an additional financing to make that possible. So we're also going to be visiting some of our elementary schools and their gardens this summer and helping care for them, and bringing our ragtag group of youth around to these different spaces, helping care for them. We'll be harvesting produce, trying to preserve a lot of produce in kitchens with students to put it away for school year food programming. We may also try to run a little market stand here and there to give students the opportunity to do that and to get that experience. But it's like you see written here, trying to provide more flexible volunteer opportunities, kind of based on feedback we've been getting from young people and the way that they want to be engaging through the summer in our gardens. So that's a little bit of an overview, I guess, of our summer work experience program. I want to just kind of step back now and tell a little bit of a story about the Flourish School Food Society. So I started out, as I described, in 2020 as a garden coordinator working part-time in the Souk School District. And I was also working in another capacity as a contractor, trying to pull together organizations to support healthy food environments in our region. And flowing from that work, we put together a central kitchen distribution model where we could cook food and distribute it out to schools. And Flourish has been founded and has grown to the point where it's providing 850 meals a day now to 20 schools. So this whole garden program thing actually sort of helps spawn an organization that is now providing really high quality, a lot of local ingredients, scratch cooked meals to 20 schools, 850 meals a day, and also growing to be able to provide groceries and other items to schools. And so it's really kind of interesting how that has all come about. And it's a longer story than I may have time to sort of share within the scope of this presentation. But it is kind of like an interesting, I guess, story, and something that people may be interested in. And with that sort of food support, and the school districts in our region have recently, and for the first time, started to receive money from both our provincial and our federal governments to support school food program development. Most of you, I think, are in the United States, where school food is something that's quite well supported. Here in Canada, we haven't had any funding for school meal programming really in my entire life. And so it's just started to happen in the last year, which is really significantly impacting the amounts of support that we have for this kind of work, and particularly for feeding kids. So a part of my work this summer as the executive director of Flourish is going to be looking at how we can use some of the revenue that we're making for providing food to help develop garden-based learning and food literacy programming to support students and to support some work experience programming. I think I'll leave it at that for now. I'm going to hand it over to Robin, who's going to spend some time talking about some of our hopes and dreams for the future, some of the successes and some of the challenges that we've faced in this work. Robin, over to you.
Thanks, Matthew. Hi, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces in the chat. Yeah, and to answer Tristana's opening question, right now here in Victoria in our school garden, we're busy harvesting snap peas as well. I saw that on somebody's list. Lots of lettuce, and the raspberries are just starting to pop out. So it's an exciting time. It's a busy time, as Jeff mentioned, in gardens. And one of the challenges we face, of course, as we've been embarking upon trying to build these learning spaces, is to fit the cycles of food production with the school year. And of course, traditionally that's in the traditional school year, that hasn't worked very well. So having Matthew come in and be a support for myself as a teacher and as an employee of the school district has been really incredible, and helped to make our schools able to look at how we can use these spaces most effectively. Just to talk a little bit about our vision here is in terms of trying to create pathways for young people to see food production, working in the food, like working with food in different capacities as a potential career option is something that I think we're just beginning to really have serious conversations about. What we would like to, it's really inspiring to hear what Jeff and Hannah have been able to accomplish. I'll just say that. And of course, one of the areas we're starting to explore is how can we build stronger relationships with our colleges and our university programs, and starting to put out feelers to see what opportunities, what courses would be good fits with this. We also have different programs in our district where we have cohort programs where you might have a student taking a course at high school and then also taking a course at university or at a college at a concurrent time. And so one of our ideas is to try to pair learning like a food studies course, for example, at high school that they could get credit for that, but they could simultaneously be getting a credit in some sort of related field at a college. Same with culinary. We have a very strong culinary program here at our school, but we see opportunity to take that program and link it more strongly with the food production side of things, and then also trying to make some linkages with some colleges that are also doing some interesting stuff around, just trying to build those skills in young people. One of the other things that we continue to see, as Matthew said, we have a lot of schools in our district that have gardens. And so the opportunities to continue to increase our summer programming is massive. So we would like to just be able to continue to recruit more young people to be a part of our summer programming and be able to caretake more effectively of the school gardens. And through that, then there's this natural interest that gets spawned in community members wanting to be a part of the gardens, or young people starting to see this as something that they enjoy, and maybe they want to continue to educate themselves in their skills. Maybe they want to reach out to our local farms and see if they can get jobs at those places. And speaking of local farms, that's another area that we continue to see opportunity for growth, is just having more direct relationships with our local farmers. Southern Vancouver Island has some fairly good agricultural land, and as a consequence, we have some really wonderful local food growers here. The challenge is, or one of our big challenges, is that land is very sought after here as well. So there's always this, it's not easy to be a farmer here these days either. So just trying to, everybody trying to strengthen each other's work that we're doing. So those are some areas we're trying to, we see as potential for future growth. Maybe I'll get the next slide. So I'll just speak a little bit about some of the challenges that we've identified. I think one of the things is just trying to make this work and these opportunities appealing to our young people. It feels like a challenge. We have, each school and each region has its own sort of areas that have a lot of strength. And I think traditionally in our district, there's been a lot of emphasis placed on athletics. There's been a lot of emphasis placed on certain forms of the arts. And I think that the idea of going into agriculture hasn't really traditionally been seen as something that's gotten a lot of support and a lot of emphasis in our curriculum and just in our society. And so I feel like we're trying to build that almost almost from the ground up, if you will, right now. And so trying to make working with food, working outside, appealable to young people, and yeah, just trying to figure out what's the way to draw them in. A second big challenge that we face is simply the fact that the people that are really advocating for these kinds of programs, and it's not just Matthew and I, we've got a really exciting network of people that are trying to make healthy food literacy more part of our society, but we're all busy and we're all working at different times, different schedules. And so just sort of maintaining those abilities to connect, communicate, hold each other up is a challenge that we have to manage. And the third challenge I'm just going to speak to, and be curious to hear how many of you can relate to this, is just dealing with the absolute bombardment of, for lack of a better word, industrial food culture. And particularly in my school, the school is situated in an area that is being developed as we speak. Used to be a gravel pit. Now there's tons of housing moving in. We're starting to get some stores moving in. And so with those big stores, it's often, they love to come here because they've got this huge population of young people to feed or to spend their money on. And so in the last year, we've had a Starbucks move in. We just had a Tim Hortons move in like 20 meters away from the school, pizza, grocery store that, obviously has some healthy options, but also serves a lot of things that are highly processed and not, appealing to the taste bud, not necessarily good for people's health. So it's a challenge to overcome those youthful tendencies to go for the coffee and donuts, let's say. And so, yeah, we're just sort of grappling with that. Just how do you entice, or how do we, just working with how to figure out how to make young people more interested in nutritious fresh food, really. Next slide. So with those challenges in mind, I think we stay in this work because we see lots of hope and lots of positive things happening too. I think the students that we work with inspire us, and we see them growing. We see them going to new levels with some of the things that they've learned. Just as an example, one of the interns that was working with us last year went off and spent quite a bit of this past year woofing abroad, and she's coming back to work with us again. We see students taking courses in sustainability, environmental, agricultural programs at universities. And I have the pleasure of getting to work with students on a daily basis. And so I see them getting excited about picking a snap pea or pulling a carrot from the ground, or they love to go out and work with the food when they have the opportunity. So having these garden spaces growing has been exciting, and we continue to see support and investment in these spaces. So we feel like we're in a pretty exciting time right now, actually. And just to, as a last point, well, maybe just 2 more points actually. The garden spaces themselves are very inspiring. Just watching things grow and change keeps us feeling like we're on the right path. And a lot of us, Matthew, myself, and some of the other people that we work closely with, we've been doing this for a number of years now, and we see ourselves growing as people, and yeah, just sort of growing as a community as well. So all that is part of this, I think. And it also, when we think about trying to, coming back, when we think about trying to entice or encourage or invite young people to be a part of this work, I think one of the things that we can do is show them that it builds community, and it can make people feel good and feel healthy. And I'm sure many of you can relate to how that positivity can snowball. So I believe that's our last slide. You mind just, yeah, so yeah, I'll invite Tristana back in now to lead our Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. And thank you all so much for everything you've shared. It's been super informative. As we've got some questions queued up, but please go ahead. If you have additional questions to our audience, please put them into the Q&A section. I'll invite our panelists to join back with their screens on, and we'll get into our questions here. So I imagine both programs could answer this question. I know the Hub Farm kind of got into how you fund your farm and internships, but if both of you could get into it, or at least share it a little bit more detail, and we specifically got a question about what your total yearly budget is, if you're comfortable sharing that. So question about how do you fund and your total yearly budget, or maybe specifically focusing on the internship portion.
Yeah, I mean, I can share just a little bit more, and then Jeff, happy for you to add in. We fund, so the farm is, our salaries are funded through the Career and Technical Education Department of DPS, like we mentioned. And outside of that, our annual budget looks about like $25K for materials, and everything else we do, so we're a steal for the district. Everything else we do is grant funded. So like Jeff mentioned, his internship program this past spring, he can speak more specifically to it, but we have funded our summer camp interns, I believe, through the Baldwin Foundation, is, if I'm correct, Jeff, this summer. And yeah, and many other grants we write. And last year we wrote over $100,000 in grant funds to support all of our programming. So that's what I'll say about that. Do you want to add anything, Jeff?
No, other than, yeah, it's mostly grants. It costs about $3,000 to do one semester for 6 students. And so if you can get that, then that's pretty a good starting point. Unless you want to do it for longer or pay them more than $15 an hour, which I think is a good starting point for high school kids in our area.
For us, we've been operating with a budget from the school district for the last couple of years. They're providing us with, it's been $27,000 over the year to pay for a garden coordinator for the whole year. So it's a part-time position. And then they give us $2,000 for materials for all of the gardens, which is not nearly enough. So the schools themselves will write grants to support material sort of costs. And then we've just secured quite an increase in support from our school district. They're looking at providing $100,000 next year to support us in caring for all of the schools. That's for all of the entire year. You know, the summer months, it's 2 months of the year, so you can divide by 6 or whatever. And our Canada Summer Jobs positions, the Government of Canada now is providing 2 positions and 9-week employment, and that's an amount of about $10,000 that they're supporting for us to be able to hire 2 young people to support our summer program. So we get that funding. And otherwise, it's mostly the school district right now. I'm going to spend some time seeing if we can put a small percentage of any money that we earn in the previous year from our food sales to support some of this work, and I'm hopeful that that will give us a little bit of a sustainable budget to support this as well. But haven't yet crunched those numbers. Our fiscal year end is at the end of this month in a couple days, so that's my task for July.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. That's super informative. Jeff, you mentioned that some of the things that are working well are community engagement and providing meaningful experiences to youth. Could you please share about how you measure either of these? And, you know, Robin and Matthew, if you also have specifics on how you measure the success of specifically your youth internship programs, would be great.
Yeah. So what I'll say about measurement, you know, we have spent time debating whether or not we want to create more formal pathways for evaluation to show either quantitative or qualitative results. We haven't gone down that pathway because there are some unintended consequences that I think that we're all wary of, which is basically like, you know, the more data you create that's going to be available to the administrators that run our district, the more you may create expectations that are not in line with things that you know to be true about the results of your programming, and that are frankly, I feel, unnecessary, especially in the age of standardized testing and the Common Core. But that said, even though we don't have a formal evaluation process, the way that we measure success and quality is just by the way that people interact with us when they're here on the farm. And an example that I can give you of that is something like our community plant giveaway, which is something that Hannah and her colleagues at the time started during COVID. I was not working at the farm during that time, but it's something that I've become heavily involved in. It's a great thing for the interns to be involved in because it is such a big production. Basically, we grow about 1,500 plants 3 different times a year that we give away to people in the community for free. And it generates a lot of foot traffic to the farm. That's not something that we normally are able to do for the public. You know, we are a public school, but we are not, you know, a park in the sense that, you know, people can't just come here when they want. So it allows the community to come and see what the farm is, because it's kind of something that you have to see to understand. It gives them opportunities to interact with the interns, and in kind, those interns get a chance to kind of express what it is that they've learned and what they're doing in the context of the giveaway. So because the interns are so heavily involved in each step of the process, selecting seed varieties, mixing the potting soil properly, making sure the plants are cared for, and then of course, like curated on the day of the giveaway. I think that the community engagement is self-evident because we get so many people coming to the farm on that day. Not just teachers, but people who just live in Durham and want to be a part of what we're offering. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
A quick note for us, like in terms of measuring impact or success with the youth programming, summer programs for us, we often will ask our youth staff to create a short report at the end of their time, and the task is to kind of talk to all of the youth involved in the program and get their input and feedback on what they liked, what they didn't like, what they would like to see you know, developed more. And then we the youth themselves kind of create a report with pictures and you know, testimonials from the youth, and then that's something that we have that we can share with the school district as well, which is quite a useful like kind of tool for us to be like, hey, this is like valuable, you guys should invest in this. And then I think also the thing that I find quite interesting as like a metric is like just like staying in touch with the kids who have been in the program and finding out what they're doing, and just like Robin mentioned, some of the like a lot of the youth really who participate in our summer program and go on to do things that are related to that kind of work, and being able to say like, hey, we've had all these kids who have gone on and like been like, this is a life-changing experience for them. Their futures were altered and they went into this where I don't know if it, like maybe they would have gone there even if we didn't exist, but you know, it's nice to see that they're inspired and go into relevant career trajectories, I guess.
Love all of that. Thank you so much for sharing. Especially love how youth being involved in the report gathering and making is another great kind of job skill to learn. That's fantastic. Could you speak a little bit to your applicants, your job applicants? Do you seek to kind of offer opportunities to particular demographics, or you know, how does equity play a role for you for both of your programs in that?
For us, we're often trying to recruit youth who have participated in the program as volunteers in the past, and trying to hold space for them, like and use it as an opportunity for youth to ladder up into more like leadership positions within our program. That's an important thing for us. We do try to also encourage sort of equity deserving groups to apply, young people especially, and so we really target our recruitment specifically through career counselors in the high schools, and then specific organizations that we know work with youth in different places within our community, and particularly trying to recruit youth who would really benefit, I guess, from the opportunity. But we don't have beyond that, I guess, much more to say about that.
I'll say our programs, our internship programs, are all open and available to all Durham Public School students. So we serve the entire district. All students are eligible to apply for our internship programs. And so, you know, I don't know the exact demographics off the top of my head for DPS, but we certainly serve a very diverse district, both in race, in cultural background, in socioeconomic status, et cetera, in gender, blah, 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 blah. But I will say that primarily, you know, our internships do rely on transportation. And so in that way, I think we could certainly work on an increase in equity via transportation. That's definitely our biggest barrier to accessing the hub farm, because we are geographically in the northern part of the district. And so students, for example, in the southern part of our district can't make the drive in the time that they need to arrive at the farm after school, or if it's a during the school day internship as well. So we generally get interns from a handful of schools that are slightly closer to the hub farm. So I think there's certainly room for us to grow in the way that we're offering our internships equitably across the district.
Great, thank you. We do have just a couple more questions. Are our panelists able to stay on just a couple more minutes? They seem pretty quick, logistical ones. Awesome. Could you speak a bit to curriculum? Who plans the curriculum, and are there any curriculum materials that you'd be willing to share?
We plan the curriculum. And in terms of materials, I don't have like anything that I think would be particularly useful, just because it's very specific to our campus and the resources that we have here. It's not too sophisticated, to be honest with you. It mostly has to do with planning around the things that need to be done to make sure that our property functions and that we deliver a product that is engaging, educational, and instills a sense of independence in the students who are here. So there's nothing proprietary, in my opinion, about the curriculum that we're providing, if that makes sense.
I'll just jump in real quick, and I'm going to drop in the chat a menu of our field trip offerings. It doesn't show like a full lesson plan outline for each of our lessons, but it gives sort of an overview. It's what we give teachers to select from for field trips. That might be helpful.
Ours is similar, like from like Flourish as an outside organization that provides garden-based education. We plan kind of curriculum, which is it's often quite like hands-on and just about what is needed in the gardens. And we do have some more sort of like focused workshops we've been developing. I don't know if any of it is really in a great state to share without some explanation, but if you contact me, I'd be happy to share what we have. Which is a growing kind of resource, I suppose. And then, Robin and teachers will develop their own kind of curriculum and work to engage their classes in the garden as well.
Yeah, I could speak a little bit about the curriculum, the curricular connection as a teacher, but I'm not sure if it would apply as much in terms of our internships. But typically what's happened here is Flourish will have days that they'll come in with their garden educators, and typically the teacher will collaborate with that garden educator to determine what workshop we want to do with them. Or sometimes it's like something that the teacher is working on that they want to expand upon with Flourish. Yeah, so it feels a little bit like it's sort of based on the group, the time of year, and the interest of the people involved a little bit too. So we don't have anything particular, like as a teacher anyway, I don't have anything necessarily particularly developed specifically for the garden. It's almost more something that we weave in. I think that this is an area, I think Jeff and Hannah spoke to the fact that some of their internships, especially at the college level, are involved in some curricular development. And I think that, to me, that's really exciting when you get, and it's the same with even high school students, when they're given the opportunity to create and design something, then I find it really exciting, because they're always doing things that are a little bit different from how you do it, and often speaking more to the interests of their peer groups. So that's just another angle you could consider taking with curricular development, is what can the people you're working with design.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think with that, we will go ahead and close us out. If you go to the next slide, please. We would love your feedback. I'm putting into the chat here our survey, the link to our survey. Love to know what you thought of this webinar and any future topics. Once again, our upcoming webinar in our series that highlights the participants of the SGSO Leadership Institute will be on bilingual family engagement on July 31st, so be sure to check that out. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you to our amazing speakers for sharing their wonderful programs from a variety of different backgrounds and two different corners of the continent. Really appreciate it, and thank you all for coming, sharing your amazing questions and experiences. Super great, and look forward to seeing all of these youth internship programs flourishing into the future. Thanks for the work that you do, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Tristan.
Thanks, yeah, thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye, everybody.